Welcome to Hey, We Like Your Pod. I'm Matt Pickett, and this week Dawn was eaten by cats. So, well, one cat, one very specific cat. So she's unable to join us, but we do have an amazing guest tonight for you. This is our good friend Tori Peot. Did I say your name right, Tori? Is it Peot?
You did. It's
all right.
Like almost no one does, so it's okay.
Nailed it. Yes. Awesome. Tori, how are you this week?
Doing good. You know, our show is usually on Thursday, so I'm always super pumped because it's Friday tomorrow. We love a weekend, but things have been going good this week. How are you doing?
I'm good. Over here in the world of sorry, I got distracted there. Over here in advising world at University of Cincinnati, where I work, we are like in the grind of meeting the students for their summer orientation. So like I am in it, and so that's pretty exciting. But exciting for me, man. I'm thinking through. It's like that's not exciting radio at all, actually. But no, I'm good. Had a good weekend last weekend too. We took the kids to go see the new Little Mermaid. Have you seen that yet, by any chance?
I haven't. We actually had to go see Guardians of the Galaxy. Still, we're like super behind on movies, but like I've heard really good things about it. It's like I want to go see it sometime.
Those are both good movies for sure. I liked how, like a movie that's what Little Mermaid is like 25 or something, 30 years old at this point.
I probably haven't even seen it in like since elementary school. So
yeah, totally right. So you take a movie that old, there's little things you need to kind of like tweak and elements of the plot that are like that wasn't great. We could make that better or tighter or something like that. And so you can see that like there were some adjustments made to the story and like a song was taken out that's kind of like the Le Poisson song that was kind of stupid. So they did a lot to like make it better. The special effects underwater were amazing, and it was really good. I was surprised at how good it was.
Well, that's
plus
good.
Plus a more ethically diverse cast, which is not a bad thing. So that was good. But the Guardians movie is really good too. I'm excited for you to see that. I wish I could see it again for the first time. It's that good.
Oh, so. We saw it, I think last weekend maybe.
Okay. Sorry.
No, we saw that one. Like it was the weekend that the Little Mermaid came out, whatever weekend that was. And I was like still so behind, and I like Marvel a lot, and so like I couldn't believe I was so behind on it. But we finally got it out of the way. We saw it.
Awesome. So for Marvel stuff, do you listen to that podcast, Watching Stuff, that Aaron Ellis and Dusty Evely and Monty do? Do you listen to that one at all?
I have not. I haven't actually heard of that one.
Oh my goodness, it's so good. Okay, so it's like three Packers people. Actually, they alternate.
I was like the names. I've definitely like heard of the names and like seen them around online. So
yeah. So like they alternate Marvel movies. Then the next week it's Aaron Ellis with Dan Kotnick doing Star Wars movies. And so they just kind of go back and forth alternating weeks. And, these are all people who are smart, funny, interesting people. So their podcasts on these things are fantastic. Highly recommend it. We've mentioned them on the show before specifically, but can't recommend them highly enough for people who like Marvel stuff. So check that out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. Thank you.
Nice. Well, actually, one more question about Marvel, actually, because I'm a huge Marvel enthusiast.
Oh, good.
Do you have a favorite Marvel movie?
Okay, so overall, the favorite Marvel movie that like I could see 1,000 times and love it every time is probably Infinity War. I mean, it's just like when everyone comes together for the first time. So I feel like it's a super easy answer. I think it's better than Endgame for sure. Just like all the action and like the emotions of everything. Endgame was like a little slow at the beginning. Great ending. Loved it still. But I would say those. And if I didn't pick that, like I loved Civil War as well. Just like any of them when they all like come together. I really like.
That's the theme there for you, is like bringing various Avengers together, in one thing. Civil War, that fight scene at the
like the airport area or whatever. My God, yeah.
So much fun.
I loved it. I'm a Captain America side person. Like I always have been.
Nice.
Iron Man's great. I love his character and stuff, and like the character development was great. But Captain America, like the first movie I saw in theater was Winter Soldier. So I think that's why I just started with Captain America. I have a Dodge Avenger. My mom gave me a bobblehead of Captain America for it because it's the first Avenger. And so that was just, it's always been him for me.
I love that. Yeah. When Civil War came out, at that time I thought like that Iron Man was a more appealing character than Captain America because he's, so like kind of straight, and sort of buttoned down or whatever. But man, after that movie, I was like, Iron Man sucks. I'm with Captain America on this.
I was so surprised on like what side people were going to be on, like on the go off and fight. Because I was like, Captain America, he's all about America. He's got to follow the government. And it was like the complete opposite. Yes. And I was like, what the heck? Because like Iron Man's character was kind of a do whatever he wants kind of guy.
He turned out to be a huge government shill in the end. So
I know.
Not a fan of that, man. But yeah, I was going to say my favorite Marvel character, my favorite superhero for most of my life actually has been Spider-Man. So I've really enjoyed those movies, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the latest Into the Spider-Verse. I can't wait to see that.
So now that this has turned into a Marvel podcast here, so then which Spider-Man is the best Spider-Man?
Like which actor do you mean? Or
yes,
Tom Holland, hands down. I mean, I enjoyed the other two, before I saw Tom Holland take it on, and he so
took it
good.
in a different way for sure. And like he's supposed to be a young character for like Spider-Man. He definitely appeals as like a young kid. Like the others didn't as much. They still looked more mature. Tom Holland looks pretty young. The only thing that's kind of weird for me with his Spider-Man versus like Tobey's is like Tobey had the powers and like the others had to like create their powers almost in a way. And so I wasn't sure how I felt about that versus just like the bit by spider story. And now you can shoot webs out of your hands.
That is a weird thing. And I like how they treat that in the Spider-Man 3 movie,
Yes. When they all came together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, you guys have to refill your webs. Like,
I love that so much. But yeah, I mean, it's so true that Tom Holland actually, though he's like 20 or whatever, 20 something, he actually looks like a teenager, and I feel like that makes a huge difference. It reminds me of before The Little Mermaid. One of the trailers was for a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's a mouthful movie, and you could tell the voice actors for it, because it's like animated, were actually teenagers. And it sounded so weird at first. I was like, what is this? Like little kids will say, no, these are what actual teenagers sound like.
Like, oh my God, these are what children are. This is what they were supposed to be the whole time. What do you mean they weren't like 40 years old in like a teenage body?
Exactly. So that's one of the reasons why I appreciate Tom Holland as the one of the actors. Then he's just really funny, and he's got that sort of like dorky energy. And
so he's just kind of like that nerdy guy, but like he's like a fun nerdy and stuff. So he really plays the part really well. I did see that like Stan Lee was saying that that's probably the best version of Spider-Man. Like that's what he was actually aiming for, was more of like his character. But I mean, I do like them all. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think it's such a good what am I trying to say, like point in the argument about how the MCU series has done like a lot of these characters much more justice, a lot better treatment, just better movies overall. I know some people will quibble about like some of the more recent ones not being as good, and like, okay, fair, whatever. But just overall, like the approaches they've taken to the characters has been so much better than what we've seen in the past for almost all those characters. That's fun.
Yeah, I know. When I think like back to like when the Iron Man came out and stuff in theaters, and I remember just thinking like, oh, it's just a superhero movie. Like I wasn't a comic book person at all. I wasn't a big superhero person. It didn't matter to me. It was whatever. It's cool. And then like it got bigger and bigger. And then my dad took me to the theater. He's like, you got to come see this movie with me. I want to go see. And that's when I was like, oh my God, this is so much better than I thought it would be. And to see like how big Marvel's become. And like, that's if I had to pick like a movie following, it'd be that. Like, I'm not a huge Star Wars person. I like it, but I just watch it for the movie and stuff. But like Marvel, I'm like, oh my God, the connection between this and this. And then like this series spinoff comparing to this. And that's where I get a little bit more into it.
Yeah, the sort of interconnectedness of all of it is so much fun, because it kind of rewards the people who put, this is gonna sound stupid, put the time into watching the movie.
Put in the effort and like do their homework.
Which sometimes it kind of is like homework, when like especially like
it's
the series that kind of like it will be a lot of episodes and maybe drag in the middle. There are definitely moments where it does feel like homework, but for the most part, I feel like it's definitely worth it, because I love that stuff so much.
Yeah, no, it's been really good, and the franchises have been huge. Not a huge DC person, I'll say it. It's just they're trying to be it, and it's just not working.
Yeah, no, totally. Zack Snyder's like trying to make things like gritty. It's like, this is superheroes, man. Like,
it's like, come on, you peaked at Dark Knight. We all know it.
Exactly. Oh man. Okay, I could keep talking about this stuff all night, but we should probably actually talk about football. So, anyhow, this is really great to have you here, Tori. This is awesome. So, one thing that Dawn and I like to do when we have a new guest is read your Twitter bio, or as Dawn calls it, your Twitto. So I'm just going to read it straight off here. We've got Tori Peot at Tori Peot, avid crock wearer and constant sarcasm giver. Yelling "Go Pack Go" all the way from Kansas City, co-host on Green and Gorgeous podcast, Instagram, Kansas City, and there you go. So first of all, I just want to say the Green and Gorgeous podcast is fantastic. If people aren't actually checking that out, like, you're missing the boat. This is a really good show. You and Hales and Emily have this amazing chemistry, a lot of good takes, a lot of interesting, thoughts and stuff like that. So like, I've really been enjoying that. It's great.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, last year was our first year, obviously, with it. We're going to have a second year, starting up around preseason. So, yeah, no, it was a really fun kind of thing. I remember, like, Hales and me had, like, me and Haley had a weird thing happen. So I'm in Kansas City, as the bio said, and she's in Kansas City. Right. And we found out, like, someone tagged us in a, like, thread, and it was, like, fans from Kansas City for Packers. And, like, someone tagged us and another girl. And I started a group chat because I was like, oh, I want to, like, get to know people because I'm not from here. So I don't know a ton of people out here. And I tagged her, and, like, I started talking to them, like, in the group chat. I was like, so where do you guys actually live? Because everyone says Kansas City, but it's like, you don't live in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And so we found out, I was like, oh, I'm like 10 minutes outside of the city. I live in this town. And she's like, oh, I live in that town. I was like, I live in this apartment building, like, complex. And she's like, I also live in that complex.
What?
And we were, like, literally walking just, like, she was, like, kitty corner behind me and stuff. It was just the weirdest thing ever. Like, we just, like, walked over to each other's places and met in the middle. And, like, we were just living, like, right by each other. So she reached out to me one time because I got to know her a little more. And then said, hey, I'm going to do, like, this podcast. It's an all-girls thing. And then it's going to be with this girl, Emily. And, like, I've seen Emily's, like, Twitter and stuff as well. And she's like, I think it'd be really cool and you'd be a good, person for it. So we all got kind of chatting to get to know each other. And we really wanted it to stay like that girls only thing, just because of how a lot of podcasts are like guys and they might throw in a girl or whatever. And so we just wanted to be all us so girls could find somewhere to, like, watch and feel like they're being listened to, they're being heard. We're just having fun with it. Like, we got drunk on one of the episodes. Like, we're just doing our thing. But it's been a really fun experience for sure.
Yeah, it's a great show. And that's something that we haven't talked a lot about it on the show before, but there's a thing that Dawn and I try to do is to have roughly the same number of male and female guests come on the show, because the more we can do to show everybody that women have smart takes about football too, like, the better, because I the more people I have out there who are making content for me to, like, engage with, the better a fan, the smarter a fan I can be. So, like, why should we try to silence, like, half the population? Like, that's ridiculous.
For sure. Like, I like to form my opinions from hearing other people's opinions as well, taking in what I can see for myself. And that's just, like, how a conversation works. And, like, some people don't get that, I guess, that, like, we can be a part of the conversation too. Like, I'm not going to just sit there and listen to you the whole time. Like, I like the back and forth. And I feel like for the most part, most guys that, like, have been in my life or around me has really been, like, they know that I'll talk sports with them because it's, like, all I do, honestly. I've been doing sports my whole life. I've always just been, like, the, like, tomboy girl. So, but it's been really good for me. But, like, I know several girls on Twitter that, like, basically get told to, like, shut the hell up anytime they say anything. And you get nitpicked for every single thing you say. And, I mean, it does suck, but, like, that's really nice that you guys feel that need to, like, show both sides of things. Because, I mean, guys have great opinions too as well, of course. And then the girls also have their own opinions and takes as well. So it's really nice.
That's right. Football's for everybody.
Exactly.
Speaking of conversations, Dawn is she's lurking in the chat here tonight, or maybe her cat. We're not sure, but so she did mention that she wants to move to Kansas and watch games with you. That would be awesome.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, as long as she's okay with my like wild dog that's like sitting there all the time. My dog Brody is a Packers fan. I tell my husband that all the time because he's not. He is a Chiefs fan. And I'm like, well, Brody is a Packers fan. And I put, when he was a puppy, he had a little like jersey. And when he got bigger, grew out of it. And so we had a different puppy at the time. And so they're about a year apart. And I put Brody's jersey on him. And I kid you not, Brody was like pulling it off of him. Like when I pulled it out, he sat down and like looked at me all wide eyed. And then like, I put it on Bubba and he just like looked and started pulling it off of his like back. So like Brody is my Packers fan. He watches the games with me.
Oh man, I love that. I try to do the same thing with my kids to get them to like, wear Packers gear and watch the games with me. It's kind of a soft sell at this point because I don't want to like make them, feel like they have to or whatever. But when they do, oh, that is the best. I love that.
We do not have any like children, and we've like had the fight of like, what's it gonna be basically, and like I would like to be the bigger person like you and be like, I'll let them choose for themselves, but like I won't. I am going to like force it down and be like, hey, this is it, because like they'd be living in Kansas City, so it'd be too easy for them.
Yeah,
and I can't get outnumbered like that.
Well, that's the thing. So you say like, in front of your husband, like, oh yeah, no, we'll let them choose. We want to raise them to be independent, thoughtful people. But behind the scenes, you're like, okay, I'm gonna give you a cookie if you root for the Packers.
You're like, and here's the onesie we're just gonna put on you for like every Sunday, coincidentally.
Exactly. Yeah, there's ways to like, kind of manage this situation, I think, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll let them pick, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, right?
I guess.
Or so you'll say. So.
Yeah, right. And I was like, and if there's two, the other one gets to be the fan no matter what. Like, you don't get to do any brainwashing.
Well, so speaking of Packers fandom, this is my best segue of the day, obviously. So how did you become a Packers fan, and who had the most influence on your fandom?
Plain and simple, the answer to like both those questions is basically my dad.
Okay.
So my dad was like born and raised in Green Bay. He's easy enough. Like he grew up seeing Packers players riding their bikes, down the road playing. They would go and like play catch with like the kids in the neighborhood even. We got to go visit my dad's like uncle. My dad's uncle, and we stayed with them when we went to a game in Green Bay, and they seriously took us around the whole town, and they're like, here's so-and-so's house, Brett Favre used to live here. Like they were just going through the neighborhood. So my dad's whole side's like a huge Packers fan, just base. My grandpa used to play for them for like a year in the late 70s, which was really cool for him, being like the hometown thing. They got to go play for the team he grew up loving. And then we moved to Minnesota eventually, which is where I grew up. And that was a very interesting thing to have happen because we grew up in Vikings country. But luckily, like there's a ton of Packers fans out there too. They're so close. They're just across the border. And so I was never the only one in the room, but stayed a Packers fan the whole entire time, and I've never stopped.
So growing up a Packers fan because your family, it's such a common thing. Like a lot of people get it from their parents. I mean, I grew up watching the games with my dad for sure. But there's like the level of being a fan, and then there's a level of being like kind of where I'd say where you are, where like a lot about the team and you're really passionate about it. So like, what do you think it was that kind of propelled you up to that like higher level?
I honestly like wish I knew. I think I've always been this way. I've always loved football. I remember in elementary school, they had us do reports, and mine was like Packers, no matter what, like Lambeau Field. Like I did every single report was on a Green Bay subject at some points. Like I've seriously always been this way. My dad's a big sports guy. Like he played D1 baseball. He was going to play football. Like I said, my grandpa was in the NFL. My uncle was trying out with the Bucks in 2003. Like we're just big football people. So Sunday was getting together, eating snacks, watching games. I mean, we got to go out. Unfortunately, I went more to like the Metrodome and stuff because that's just easier for us.
Yeah.
Went to a few games in Lambeau Field growing up, and it's just always been who I am. I'm just a huge, like I said, I'm a sports nut. It's crazy.
So you were forged in a very good fire at an early age, and it took and it went from there. So you mentioned that you went to a couple of games growing up. Did you have any memorable ones that you went to at Lambeau?
My very first game was one of their coldest games. It was early January. I want to say it was like 2004-ish. I was pretty young. And that game was so freaking cold outside. Cause like my dad told me what it was like. He knew what it was. My mom was terrified of me going because she thought I was gonna like freeze to death. So she put me in snow pants, jackets, multiple, gloves, multiple pairs, hats, scarves. Like I looked like the kid from A Christmas Story. He was like walking around like this.
That's what I was picturing.
It's exactly what it was. You can even see my Packard stuff because like it was all jackets. But that game was so cold that they stopped selling hot chocolate because it started freezing.
Oh my goodness.
And I remember the guy next to us was with his girlfriend. They were probably in their late 20s, and he didn't bring a pair of gloves at all. And so my dad had to give him, luckily we had like a third pair. And so we gave him some because like I was like, he's not going to make it. He's losing fingers otherwise. And like by the end of the game, he's like wiping his nose with it because all the snot. And he's like, do you want your gloves back? My dad's like, no, you can keep them.
I'm good. Nah.
But that was like my very first game. One of the games we got to go see in Green Bay, or not in Green Bay, it was in Kansas City against Green Bay. Me and my now husband got engaged at, so like that was pretty cool. So that was a memorable one, but
I would think so.
Yeah, I think I've been to Lambeau like 3 times now. Decent. And stuff, which is nice. And we want to get back up there for Kansas City's game.
I was gonna say, yeah, this year it's the time for number 4 for sure.
I've been like waiting. Every single year I tell people, I was like, all right, every 4 years we play you guys usually, and this time it should be in Green Bay because it's been in Kansas City the past like 3 times. It feels like. So I've been like counting it down, like waiting for the announcement of the schedule, and I was like, all right, this is it.
As somebody who lives in Cincinnati, of course, unfortunately, they don't play the Bengals nearly often enough. They only come here to town, once every 8 years. But then we found out that the first preseason game is going to be here. So it's like, ooh, it's a bonus.
That's your little bonus. I said, usually they play Kansas City in preseason. So like we went last year and like we try to go when they play Green Bay. But it's just not the same, Yeah. No, but I mean, I'll take what I can get any year.
That's the thing. Exactly. Take what I can get. Like, hey, it'll be many of the Packers like starters potentially for at least part of the time. It's the first preseason game, so maybe even Jordan Love will be out there a little bit. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I said we don't know. It's a whole different quarterback in the system. We don't know what he wants. We don't know what they want.
Exactly. And isn't that exciting having a new quarterback and a new system and everything like that?
It's like exciting and terrifying all at the same time. Like I'll be honest, I'm getting so tired of like people. So I work with patients, like I'm a physical therapist assistant. So I see people every day. I talk to them, and whenever they're like, oh, you're a Packers fan, like, what about the quarterback? And I'm like, I know. Everyone knows it's a new guy. But I mean, it's exciting. It's nerve-wracking because I mean the games I saw him in, I wasn't super confident in. As like they got further along, I've kind of like come to realize like, okay, this system was not built for him. Like when he got thrown into games, like literally just like, here, take it.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to him or like the rest of the group. I'm enjoying seeing like the chemistry they're building right now in the off season, which makes it exciting. Because I follow like AJ Dillon and his wife. Like I love watching their stories because it was like them goofing around Memorial Weekend. So I'm hoping that will help. And like this team, like on the offensive side, is relatively pretty young. So if they start having good chemistry and we see good stuff, this could be good for a while. Who's to say? I mean, the biggest thing to take away from Jordan Love is that he's not going to be an Aaron Rodgers, just like Aaron Rodgers was not Brett Favre. So it's going to be a completely different guy. And I can just hope he does good enough.
Yeah, it really seems to me like this isn't a rebuild. It isn't a reload. It's a sort of like proving like bread proves, like in a warm oven before you actually bake
Yeah.
it. That's what it's like. It's like we have these ingredients. They need to just start to like meld together and start to expand and grow together. It's a growing year, I guess. I mean, is another way to put it, and so the bonds they form, the progress they make this year, I think is going to make for potentially a very strong team after this year. But this year it might not be a lot of wins,
and it might not be like we're going to probably see more losses than we have in a while. I mean, like last year, you could see online like people that were just like not used to losing.
Yeah,
and like it was very blatant. Which I mean, that's part of the game. You can't win them all.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I'm shooting for like if it's a 500 season, like I'll take it. Just to like just see what we have, honestly, and then we work on the next year and see what we need to take away from that. Because again, we're too young to really know what we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the offense is very young and going to develop. The defense was, of course, a huge disappointment last year, but they got better at the end. So I don't know. How do you feel the defense is going to do this year?
I would like to hope good. Like the defense. Like, yeah, we had so much. Like I remember at the beginning of our show when we were still in preseason, like just hyping the heck out of our defense, and I was like, man, did we do this? Did like we jinx them? Like, was that us? So like I would definitely the people that we saw at the end. We went on our run, which was almost more painful because it got my hopes up.
Yes. It was the hope that killed all of us.
It really was. And I'm like, is this what it's like to be a Vikings fan? Like so I mean, I hope that we come out as like our end defensive side rather than what we saw in the beginning.
Yeah, which was not great for sure.
I mean, there wasn't much to see.
Yeah. If we end up at 8-9 or 9-8, right at that middle mark, like you were saying,
yeah, I'll take it.
I'd be happy about that. I guess, what do you think is going to be like the floor and the ceiling for number of wins for them this year?
That's a good question. The floor, I'd say we would at least win 4 games.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, that's like
that's a very low floor.
I know it's a really. If I just like put the bar so low, it can only go up, right?
There you go.
Like that's how I stay afloat. But like I'm looking at the schedule. I'm like, there's 4 people. Like there's 4 games that we should be able to win at least. I'd say realistically 6 as like the low though.
That's where I'm at for the floor is 6.
Yeah.
So the ceiling.
The ceiling. Like thinking about like our opponents and like who we have.
Sure.
Maybe like 11.
Yeah, I'm a little optimistic, but I'm also an inherently optimistic human being. So
I am like the very pessimistic one on our show too.
You said 4, so yeah.
Yeah. I was like if you talk to Emily, like Emily is like, oh yeah, like the floor 10. Like she is so optimistic, and I'm like, I'll just bring us all down a notch here.
I think they could get up to 13 if Jordan Love shows like amazing, if he's really, really good, if he's what we like just hope in our heart of hearts that he could be, if he happens to be that. So like I'm not saying it's likely at all. Yeah. But I think 13 could happen.
I'm just like I'm thinking back to like Aaron Rodgers' first season and like it took like 4 games for him to kind of like get things like figured out.
Yeah.
So I feel like honestly, just with Jordan Love, part of me wants to say it might take a little bit longer than that. It's hard to say because I do feel like Aaron worked a little bit more with him than like Favre did with Rodgers.
Oh yeah.
Favre with Rodgers was like literally he said, "I'm not training someone to take my place." But Aaron Rodgers, being the terrible teammate he is, still helping out Jordan Love and like trying to give him some pointers. I mean, it's so hard. I'm so like conflicted. My problem is like I hate being wrong, so I'm like I gotta just give like a nice answer for everyone.
We have a good point coming here from Dawn in the chat. I just want to highlight this for a second. She's saying if Matt LaFleur's scheme is as good as we think it is, and it's quarterback friendly like the Shanahan stuff tends to be, I say we could get to the playoffs. Yeah, and especially with how weak the NFC North really is.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, like we're not that I mean, the Vikings losing Dalvin Cook, today, they're letting him go. And I was like I was texting my dad and I'm like, who do they even have like behind him? And he's like, exactly. Like they don't have anyone behind him. So like they're losing a key part of that, which just makes it easier to cover like Jefferson because their run game's not that great.
Right.
The Lions, I think, are definitely the dark horse of our whole entire like scheme or like the division. I think they're definitely the dark horse. The Bears are still the Bears, and I'm tired of people telling me about Justin Fields. I'm like, why would I believe that he is the like god you think he is?
Yeah. I mean, I think the Bears will be better than last year because you couldn't be much worse.
Again, the floor is down pretty low.
But I mean, a lot of people are hyping the Lions up. It's definitely like, gone beyond just being like the hipster pick to say the Lions will win the division. But
yeah,
I don't know, man. I feel like there's just enough like Lions gonna lion that'll always be there.
Definitely. No, my dad, like one of my dad's best friends is a Lions fan. And like he was text that year that they lost, what was it, 7 in a row in the beginning of the season or something.
Yeah.
So he was like texting him, I think it was like week 3, and he was like, hey, like they got the lead. There's only like a minute left. And he's like, well, they're still the Lions. Like he's well aware of his team's ability.
It is stunning how good they are at collapsing.
I definitely am like kind of worried about, I'm not used to losing to the Bears. It's like been a while. Like what if we lost to the Bears?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like the Packers for me at this point, where it's like we don't really know what they're going to be. There's a lot of unknowns versus like the Vikings. They're selling off their pieces, so we know they're not going to be great. And a lot of their wins last year were like one score, very close things that could have gone either way. So
definitely,
like that's going to regress to the mean. They're not going to have as many weapons. Like, are the Vikings trying to actively tank? Like, what is going on there?
They're just like not used to winning, maybe, and like being the top seed in our division. So they're like, this is really uncomfortable for us. We got to get back to where we're happy.
They're just wetting themselves.
Yeah. It's honestly like coming from Minnesota. Like, I don't hate any team more than I hate the Vikings. Just growing up in Minnesota, I cannot stand them.
Yes.
And I think it's because I had to deal with like the fan base growing up, like to my face since I was a kid.
Absolutely. And I mean, I lived in Chicago for 6 years as an adult. And so I'd wear Packers stuff around. And, I was definitely at a point where like Bears fans couldn't say anything to a Packers fan, but I always had good, interactions with Bears fans, like universally.
I really have. Like, I mean, some on Twitter can get kind of rough and like annoying, but like some Packers fans on Twitter can too.
Yes.
But I definitely tolerate the Bears fans way more than I would the Vikings fans.
Yeah, it feels like a friendly rivalry versus like, look at the Vikings. It's kind of like it's nasty. And like, okay, you're right.
Hatred.
There is hatred there. But I mean,
the players, like when they were playing in the playoffs, like and the players on the Packers were tweeting about the Vikings very backhandedly, and I'm like, okay, good, they hate them too.
Yeah,
like, it's not just me being petty. Like they also hate them.
Yes, and we're talking about an organization that will like play as its highlights at the beginning of a game. Anthony Barr taking Aaron Rodgers out for the rest of the season by breaking his collarbone. Like, that's disgusting.
And then like people like framing the photo and like putting it in their like man cave.
Like that's not cool.
We were at a Buffalo Wild Wings and like I can't remember who it was, but like someone went down on our team and like Vikings fans were like clapping and I'm like, dude, like I wouldn't do that.
No, I absolutely would not.
Like I would never wish an injury upon like anyone. Because they're still people.
Yes.
Except for maybe Deshaun Watson. I could maybe.
Ooh, that's a good take right there. Exactly. Like, yeah, no, I could see him getting injured. I'd be okay with that. Yeah, but of course, there's some characters. That's trouble that I even said characters. It dehumanizes them. Some players. And down against Sue, I'm looking at you, buddy.
Oh my God, I can't stand Sue.
Oh my God.
If he got hurt, I'd be like, honestly, you had it coming.
Yeah,
like exactly. I hope it doesn't like kill you and like take you out for a while.
No permanent damage.
Like you've stepped on so many of our people intentionally.
That's right. You have hurt people, so this is it's coming back around to you.
Exactly, full circle.
All right, so we have a couple more questions here I want to get to. So we always like to ask our guests, how do you manage your time and do all that you do for the community? And like, so what kind of support system do you have for that?
I mean, my time's like honestly crazy. Like I have like ADHD to where like I can't not be busy or I feel very uncomfortable. So like I mean like my hours are like 7 to 7.
Ooh.
I work 5 days a week. On the off times, I'm going out and I'm like I play softball a lot. So I play softball on 4 different teams, at least 4 games a week.
Oh my goodness.
I pick up also. I do photography. Like it's a lot. Giving back to the community. Like one of my job is a very like community based thing with physical therapy.
Yeah.
That's always really nice. I go out and I love like we do like a lot of high school athletes. And so like I like going out, I watch their games after they've overcame an ACL injury or something.
Right.
And like we go and we support them all the time. And I mean, I don't know, like giving back to the community is really important and stuff. And just to like get to know where everyone's at and kind of always be in touch to keep yourself like grounded.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so,
Yes.
yeah, I try to get out in the community a lot and I help out people wherever I can.
I love that. That actually leaves us sort of segues us nicely into our last question that we ask our guests, which is about our beloved, Packers and NFL online community, because it really is a community, a lot of really great,
For sure.
not so great ways. So along those lines, what's one thing that you love the most about the Packers online community, and what's one thing that you would change if you could?
One thing I love the most is that like I didn't even know this was like really like sports Twitter. I wasn't really aware of it until probably like 2 years ago. Like I would get on Twitter for the memes. Like that was solely what I did. And like I don't even know how I got to it, but I kept like I just follow the Packers and I just keep looking. And then I've gotten to like meet so many people now from it. Like Haley was my neighbor and stuff. And I've seen her out and about, like not podcast related. And then I talked to a handful of girls online. I've met some girls online. It's definitely made me feel more confident about speaking how I feel about sports for sure. Just because I'm like, well, here's all these other people doing. I might as well do it. It's gotten me very like even more in love with the team than I probably was before. I've always just liked, watching football. I've liked the players, but like now I feel like this is a passion I have now, is like dealing with the Packers. So it's really cool to see all the different personalities where everyone's from. Packers fans are all over. So like that's one of the coolest things. It's just like seeing where people are from, and then you get to hear, like, especially on your podcast, you get to hear like, how did that even happen? Like, I wouldn't imagine someone like Cincinnati being a Packers fan, for instance, but there's a background story to it. Something to change would just be like, and I'm sure everyone says it, just stop with all the rude stuff. Let people say their piece. Again, we all have opinions. So I've seen some people get like kind of nasty again, I talked to a lot of the girls, so I get to hear a lot of that and all the nasty things guys are saying to us and sliding in the DMs and saying weird stuff. So if that could stop, that'd be cool.
For sure.
But like, will it ever? Who's to say? Honestly, it's made me kind of a stronger person now. If like someone tries like downplay who I am or just like make fun of you for like your appearance, it just made me a stronger person. I'm like, I honestly like do not care anymore.
Yeah. Like some this is a family show, so I have to watch my language. Some dill holes, like opinion about what you look like who cares about that dill hole,
I know, I'm like, and why does that like make any sense for what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
like that just makes me feel like you think I'm right, but you don't want to say I'm right.
Because if you have to resort to that, that's not effective arguing. That's just being childish.
Yeah, and I'm not a child anymore.
Exactly. But at the same time, I don't mean to diminish the fact that like definitely, women aren't treated with respect as much as like say men are, and just talking about sports in general. So like not to diminish that. It's not like you can just say like always, oh, whatever, you're a dumb little boy. I can only imagine the kind of crap that you get like in your DMs, like you're saying, like that stinks.
Yeah, luckily I don't have like a ton of it. I'm very glad.
Good.
But yeah, I'm gonna keep it that way. Otherwise, I'll close those
Yeah,
things.
seriously.
But yeah, there's some weirdos out. There's some weird girls out there too, to guys.
Sure,
It goes
sure.
both ways. There's
Goes both
weirdos
ways.
everywhere.
There's weirdos everywhere. That is true. That could be our like part of our national anthem, actually. So you had mentioned that I lost my train of thought, Tori. I don't know what I was going to say. Shoot. There was something really profound in there, and I wanted to come back to it, but now it is. Oh no, I know. Okay, okay, sorry. When you said that people probably always say this, and you kind of got into what you would change, you'd be surprised at how many different answers we get for that. Actually, like there's a lot of
Really?
flavor of like the negativity, like let's stop it, but like there's a lot of different things that we get from people, and also a lot of different things we get for like what people love the most about it. So I love that question. I mean, I will admit all these questions Don made up forever ago, and we keep using them for really good questions. So all credit
Because
to
I
Don
mean,
on
if they
that. You
keep
know,
working, I
they
mean,
keep
why fix it if it ain't broke?
exactly. So that's great stuff. All right. So one thing I wanted to ask about before we moved into talking about the superlatives here was you mentioned doing photography. What kind of stuff do you do? I want to know more about that.
I try and do it all. I'm very like amateur, so like in college. So I played softball in college,
Mhm.
and like our work and learn program. So like my job was to do photography for like all the sports. So I'd go to all the sporting events, I'd take the photos, I'd upload them to the website, all that. I would do stats and things like that.
Mhm.
And so then I just like always have been pretty artsy. Like this painting behind me, whatever side my hands on, like I
Mhm.
did my painting there for that.
Nice.
And so photography I've always liked, and then I've just now kind of more gotten into it. So I've done sports, I've done families, engagements. I did a wedding. Not a huge fan of doing weddings because it is so much.
I bet.
And I mean,
Yeah.
it's like 8 hours, and then like the editing is like 2,000 photos.
Yes.
And I like the engagements. Weddings are just raw. And then I've done like pet portraits. I've done boudoir kind of like shoots, which are actually like really, really fun. They're a little
Okay.
risque, but
Sure.
like they're so much fun, especially for like the women. They feel so great afterwards. I just did like a baby one for the first time. So I've just kind of been like messing with it all and seeing like what I like.
That's awesome, and you're getting gigs doing it, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
I love digital photography. It's one of my interests that it's a little more to the side, you know, since I had kids, but like I love it. I have a fairly decent DSLR that I like to use for that kind of stuff, and I love photography.
It's really cool. And I've always been the like more take like I think when I do photography, I'm like, what picture would I like? And
Yeah.
then I like to make it for them. Posing is so stinking hard though. Like that's the hardest part.
So Dawn had mentioned in the chat here, she said, talking about the artwork behind you, that she's going to ask about the artwork that is there. Is it like kind of like a Quadzilla kind of thing? Is that what we're seeing
It is
here?
a Quadzilla thing. I can maybe try to pick this computer up and show you.
Sure. Let's field trip over to the picture. Let's do this.
Here I come. So this here is where is it? There we go.
There we go.
That's my painting I did. And yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
literally just AJ Dillon with a
Mhm.
Godzilla silhouette behind him. And what was really cool about that is I posted it and I like tagged him on Instagram and he posted it on his story. And I like messaged him and I was like, oh my God, like I'm so glad you saw it. Like, thanks, you are my favorite player right now, like on the team. And he like messaged back and he's like, oh yeah, you know, hope you can make it out to a game, go Pack go and stuff. And I was like, this is
That's awesome.
I could die happy. Like this is it. But yeah, my great grandpa, like I have a carving. It's like you can't really see it because it's like over there somewhere. There it is. It's actually from when we won the Super Bowl, and he did a wood carving of like Lombardi and the trophy. And so I have that from him, and like he's passed now a few years ago. But like, so like I have a couple like Packers things from him that are like really cool too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. I just want to get a quick shout out here, though, to our friend Brian Maffey, who is joining us in the chat. Brian, glad to have you here. There's a little bit of funny interaction between you and Don talking about how that's actually Don's cat typing with no thumbs on the keyboard, but glad to have you joining us in the background here, Brian. Thanks, man. So, yeah, photography. Oh, love it. All right. So I might ask you before the show, Tori, if you had brought any superlatives for this week, and you said you didn't have any. So I'm going to start on mine. But if you think of some things that you want to give some shout outs to, any, especially articles, writers, podcasters, podcasts, anything you've kind of seen in the last week or even more a couple of weeks, whatever, I want you to share it with us. Okay. So, but I'll start those. So the first one that I have for this week, and I have to get to the right place in the show document for that, is where the heck did I put it? Oh my goodness. Sorry, that took so long. Okay, so anyhow, my first one is most fun OTA thing. It's a very specific category. But a thing that I, love, of course, is seeing the beat reporters tweeting furiously about all the stuff happening in the OTAs. So you've got, your Matt Schneidman, Bill Huber, Andy Herman, Rob Domofsky. I'm forgetting 4 or 5 other people, like Paul Brettel, for example, like tweeting stuff. So it's almost like you're there with all the stuff that comes out, which is awesome. No complaints about that. But because it's like the same kind of a thing going through, it starts to feel a little bit like an overwhelming sort of, fire hose in a way, right? But every now and then, one of the beat reporters gets silly and they start doing stuff that like kind of, switches it up and makes things like especially kind of like silly and fun. And so the one I'm talking about here is that both Matt Schneidman and Wes Hodkiewicz both started taking shots of the field, starting with like Rob Domofsky, like right in the frame. Like there's one with his calf is like taking up half of the screen. There's one like just over his head, and one where they started like establishing a shot of him and then went to the field. And like them busting Rob Domofsky's chops, like I'm here for it. I live for that. So it really made me happy to see that stuff. Did you see any of that?
I have not seen it. I like to like tune into like some of the like team photos and stuff like after when they post them, because again the photography aspect of it, like I love it. But like when they do like just like this, I just love the silly stuff and like just ways to make us remember like these are just a bunch of like young guys in like their 20s 30s just hanging out as friends. And
yeah,
I do like all that.
And you mentioned the photographer for the Packers, Evan Siegel. He's amazing.
He's gotten some great shots. We usually try to do, so we have a Thirsty Thursday segment, and it started as like the like game day, like fits and stuff. And like lately we just started like picking whatever photos it kind of felt. So I would like go through all of them there and be like, I love this photo. Like this looks good. And so I've been like, I look at those almost like every week.
Nice. There was a picture in this week of like the team at the end of practice, I think, with Lucas Van Ness looking like a friggin' superhero in the back. Do you know what I'm talking about?
That guy is so big.
Yeah, right?
Like he's like 6'5", 270 or something.
Something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah.
That guy would make me feel small. And like, I'm not a small person. Like I'm like 5'9", and I'm not pencil thin if you couldn't tell by the everything about me. But that guy would like make me actually feel little.
Totally. I mean, it's like, it kind of makes me think of the, AJ Dillon next to Aaron Jones pictures from, I think last year, that are like so hilarious. It looks like Princess Bride with like, Andre the Giant standing next to like Wallace Shawn, but yeah, no, he just looks like just massive in the picture. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. Which I mean, we're going to probably end up needing him, maybe the first couple weeks at least, I'd say.
For week 1. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have another one to do, but if you want to jump into one right now, do you have anything you want to shout out real quick?
I'll just shout out our podcast for people to find.
Yes.
Green and Gorgeous. You can find us. We're on Twitter, and then we do StreamYard every Thursday at about 7:00. It is me, Haley, and Emily, and we're just kind of hanging out, talking about our feels for. Usually, we look into the next week of things, just being towards the end of the week. We make some predictions. We have a Thirsty Thursday segment that we like to do, going over the game day fits. And no, it's really just a good time. So if anyone wants to tune into that, that'd be great.
You should. It's a great show, folks. You should be checking that out. So, all right, my next one then is going to be most underrated Packers podcaster. So I was thinking about this week. A guy who's doing a podcast that I feel like people aren't really talking about as much is Clayton with his Packers Total Access, which is one that's part of the Packernet podcast network that kind of Ryan Schlip started with Pack Daddy, So if you haven't listened to Clayton, I think his last name is Bailey, but he just goes by Clayton typically. he has a southern accent. So at first you're like, okay, who's this guy? But like then you kind of like start to listen, like, oh, he'll make fun of himself. He'll be like, well, I just sound like a dumb hick with this accent. But like once you get past that, like silly, kind of prejudice, like, oh man, I have that. I have to like, kind of be better about that. Like you hear that he has amazing football takes, so much insight. His show, Packers Total Access, the concept behind it, why it's called that, is because he tries to bring like various lenses to understanding the Packers, like from the players to the plays to the front office to the salary cap, to like every kind of different aspect that you can like think about the team. So you get like a more complete sort of understanding of what goes into it. So like that's cool. He does these Chalk Talk segments. Often, I think actually does them all as video, but he also like uploads them as podcasts, so you can hear it too. And his depth of understanding of like offensive scheme and how things work, it's really cool. And like apart from just him being like a good listen, he's like a super nice guy on Twitter. And I will say that like I can tell that if we had a discussion, him and me, about some of the like political beliefs we have, I think we'd be different in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think he'd be really civil about it, and like really willing to listen and like discuss and not just be like,
in your face, like
yeah, or being like, you're stupid, I'm not going to listen to you. He's a really reasonable, like friendly person, and the kind of like positivity that Don and I are always trying to spread. So big shout out to Clayton. Really good stuff he's doing, and I really appreciate his energy and his presence in the community.
Yeah, no, I'll have to give that a check out then, because I like that stuff, like right up that alley of. Sounds like he's kind of a fun, kind of chill guy with it, but then he definitely knows what he's talking about. And
yeah,
I definitely love when people can go really in depth on a lot of the offensive schemes and stuff of like the whole game.
Yeah, the people who know that stuff inside and out. Like we had Dusty Evely on the show last week for a second time actually, and gave him a chance to just kind of like just talk about the stuff he's been working on, and it was so fascinating.
Honestly, like those people, I give them so much props, like, because like I like to think I really do know the game itself, but when it gets into those like really fine details and stuff like that, I just like watch and awe, and I'm like, oh my god, like I wish I was you.
There's always more to learn. It's amazing, isn't it? Because like, as a little kid watching it, I was like, oh, okay, they get the ball and they run into each other and they try to get across the field. Okay, I got it. Okay, we got this. No, it's so intricate. And
there's like every single person's moving at every time. And it's honestly like basketball. You can have a LeBron James on your team and win something.
Mm-hmm.
But like you cannot have, just Tom Brady on like any given team and then go ahead and like win the whole damn thing. You got to put people around them. Like it is one of the most teamwork sports like out there, because if one person messes up, the whole thing's going to flop.
Yeah, totally. It's such a team sport. Exactly. And having 22 people moving around, like all doing a thing. I don't think so I was listening to, the Athletic Football Podcast, which we talk a lot about in this show, and they had like a mailbag this week, and they're asking like, how do you like suggest people watch football to get the most out of it as they're watching? And like these are two really, really smart football people, Robert Mays and Nate Tice, who do the show. And the way they talked about it was like, look, when we're watching it, it's just kind of washing over us. And I think actually Dusty said this last week, for that matter, like you can't take it all in. You have to go back and watch it again and again and again, like any given play, to like really see what's happening and see all the.
Yeah, it's because every part is moving so differently.
Exactly. So the fact that it's so intricate is something that, like, just when I think I know stuff, then it's like kind of like you're saying, like you hear some people breaking some stuff down, and you're like, oh my god, like I have so much more to learn about this, and that makes my heart sing, Tori. I love like knowing that there's always more to learn about a thing that I already love. Like that.
I think football for me I didn't play football growing up. Mm-hmm. And like, that's like, I know baseball extremely well. Like the way people can talk about the sport of football, I could talk about baseball or softball easily. Mm-hmm. And it's just because I grew up playing it my whole entire life. And like football was one I actually had to sit down and learn with like no playing, like no actual, like going into a game and seeing it myself. Mm-hmm. It was all like asking the dumb questions and stuff that I felt were dumb, and just enough to where it'd be like, okay, why is this not a catch? Okay, because of this rule. And then going into all the details and like seeing this position, this is what they do. it was like the sport I actually had to like learn. It was not one that I just got to play and figure out.
Absolutely. And I didn't grow up playing any sports. I was just a huge like nerd, no muscle mass. So me neither on the football, but always enjoyed watching it. And I think going back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier with like it being such a family thing for so many people, it really does. I guess what I'm trying to say is like when I watch football and watching the Packers, I'm like texting with my dad. Like that's a part of like my relationship with him and like how we connect and how we talk about things. It's not like the only thing, of course, but it's part of the whole thing between him and me. And that's a big reason why I think I love it. It has sustained my, fandom and my love for football throughout the years,
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Like every single game I'm texting my dad, whether it be, that was a BS call or so-and-so needs to get their head out of where. But I mean, we are always discussing the game and stuff because I mean, when I was growing up, I watched every game with him. I'm not living there now. So that's what we have to kind of like stay in touch, which is really nice.
It's a great thing for sure. All right. Well, I have one more superlative, but I want to give you a chance to jump in with anything else you want to shout out. If there's anything, if not, that's okay. But anything?
I'm pretty good.
All good. All right. So my last one then is going to be best advice. So I talk about this podcast a lot on the show. It's the Blue 58 podcast that John Meerdink does. Are you familiar with this one, Tori?
I'm not sure about this one.
Okay, I'd recommend it because it's actually one of my favorite podcasts. John Meerdink, it's just like him talking. I feel like a lot of podcasts with one person talking, I'm not super crazy about them. But his observations and his insight and how concise he makes his episodes, they're like 20 to 30 minutes at the most. So his idea is like it should be a drive to work or maybe to work and back, you should be able to like get the whole podcast done. So it's really like distilled what he talks about. And he has this like amazing voice. It's really great for radio. So or for podcasts, I guess, but recommend check out Blue 58. Anyhow, this week at the end of his episode, he said, basically football stuff aside, there's something else I want to talk about. And he mentioned that his second grade teacher, Mrs. Doris Hendricks, had just retired after 40 years as a teacher. And he said that he thinks about her a lot over the years, because one thing about Mrs. Hendricks is that she always did everything full bore, never half measures, never just kind of like, let's go with half measures so I can avoid that swear word too. So, half butt. And that's something he definitely tries to bring to the work he does, with his family, with his work, with his podcast. And so this idea of don't do anything halfway, that's how you could put it. Don't do anything halfway.
There you go.
It's just really good advice for everybody, So I loved that. It really hit me, especially as somebody who was a public school teacher for 13 years. You probably don't know, I taught band for 13 years. So
okay.
Anytime people are talking about teachers that they really loved and connected with and have made an impact, man, I love that.
Just hits you in the heartstrings.
It does so much. So much. So I love that. Don't do anything halfway. Absolutely golden advice right there. Well, all right, Tori, that's all the superlatives I brought for this week, and we got the stuff from you there. So I guess we're just about done here. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with us?
Not too much. Like I said, go check us out on Twitter at, green_gorgeous. I'm on Twitter. My Twitter is my name right here at Tori Peot. But go give us a follow and just see what we have going on for next season.
Yeah, I hereby, what's the word? I hereby endorse that statement. It's slightly different, but you know what I mean? I agree, folks. Check them out. All right. So, friends, do make sure to follow our guest on Twitter, and that is TORIPEOT. You're gonna see the name. You're gonna think it says Tori Poet. It doesn't say Tori Poet.
And that's what everyone says, anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. Easy mistake to make, but don't be that guy. So, but of course, you'll find links in our show description for everyone we mentioned. So please check it out. And whether you're a super fan or a content creator, we'd love to have a chance to interview you. So if you're a subscriber, our DMs are open at Hey Willip on all the social platforms. We'd love to hear from you or someone you'd like to nominate to be a guest on our podcast this year. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us to keep spreading the love in our community. And the best way to help this podcast grow is by sharing it with your friends and family. So Tori, this was great. Thanks for joining us today. This was really
Yeah,
a fun conversation.
thanks for having me on, Matt, and like Dawn. Thank you. I know you're listening somewhere.
Dawn did all the work on this for sure. I just kind of showed up.
She did do a lot of the work on the back end of things.
She always does. So yeah, just to kind of wrap up here, the last part of the closing script, if you will, here, Tori, it just goes like this. It goes, yes, Maddie. Dawn says, yes, Maddie. That's right. We love you. We're so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. We appreciate your support, subscriptions, and sharing our pod, and looking forward to seeing you next week on Hey, We Like Your Pod. I'm saying it slowly because I'm trying to get over to the outro music. And woof, I just, Dawn does this so smoothly. It's amazing. Here we go. All right. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Yeah.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens.